And I've had that experience reflected by a lot of people, that transition uses every bit of them.
Oh, well then swap, if you want to.
Yeah, we often ask the groups who come on our training what it is about transition that really attracted them.
It's permaculture with knobs on them.
One of the things that comes across very strongly is how powerful this positive visioning for the future is in drawing people in. And for me, that's one of the most powerful things that any of us can do at this time. Close your eyes and imagine, what would your community look like if you have the future that you really want for your children? What would that look like? What would it feel like? What does it taste and smell like? What are you eating? You know, what do you wear? What do the buildings look like? What are people doing in their days? How do they look when you look into their eyes? Those sort of questions are really powerful, I think, for people to come out of the despair and have a sense that there could be another future. You know, if we don't do that visioning and imagining the world we want and then take steps towards it, we're going to get a world that somebody else wants. So at a personal level, for most people, as they wake up or, you know, come into a realisation that the world's not going to carry on as it is today, you know, initially it's often a very isolated place to be.
Yeah, and it's so hard to kind of, so hard to, like, I'm the crazy person in the room, and I think...
And it's stressful and often painful, and, you know, one of the really important things is to keep connecting with people who see that the change is coming, because it helps support that in you. So that's one of the things that I think transition really provides, is a place for people who see that things are changing to connect with others who want to do something about it, and whose choice on waking up is action, you know, is to find ways of taking action, because just to take action itself brings about a transformation. You know, and it shifts that belief that I think is very pervasive in our world, that there's nothing that I can do as an individual. But actually, if we don't do it as individuals, you know, and even better as individuals who come together as groups, nothing's going to happen.
Welcome to TNS News, Totnes News Station. I'm your lead anchor, Colin Parker, and tonight's top stories. Coldest weather since records began, way back in 1802. We go over to our weather reporter, Donald Carter, for more information.
We definitely wanted the ideas to be coming from them and to be a genuine expression of what they'd learned, what they discovered. As soon as you introduce the idea of the future, a lot of what comes up in kind of collective consciousness in a way is images of hoverboards and aliens, and so it took a little bit of kind of guidance.
Recently there's been rumours that a group of fat middle-aged men have been found inside the castle. They've been using small children, many as young as 8, with plastic forks to be digging for oil that has been found underneath the castle. There's been a very bad amount of oil in this country for the past 20 or so years.
People told stories about their schools, about celebrity culture, all sorts of wonderful, wild ideas.
I see, but what about your clothes? Surely they must be made by machines.
We press them ourselves, with material made from blind nuns in Austria.
Okay.
To envision something positive, we show the possibility of how it could be different and then find ways of moving towards it, and that feels absolutely essential to what transition tells us about the power of storytelling, really.
Stories shape the way that we act. There are probably 3 dominant cultural stories about the future and where we're headed, and one is the sort of business as usual. Everything will tomorrow will basically look like today, but maybe slightly different, maybe bigger and faster and shinier. And the second is apocalypse. You know, we're all doomed, we're all going to hell, and there are many manifestations of that throughout the media, of course. And the third is probably this sort of idea that technology will solve all our problems, and maybe ultimately end up with Star Trek or something, like exploring the universe. so what we're trying to do is build a fourth vision, a transition vision, which is about a more localised, resilient future in which we avoid the worst of peak oil and climate change, the worst consequences of those, and move into a future where we have lots of people living lower energy lives, but much more satisfying lives, much more fulfilling lives.
Well, the reason for making the oil memorial was to try and get people to understand in the school just how much was dependent on oil. The children were going by and I'd say, what's plastic made of? And they'd say, plastic. And I said, yes, no, but what is plastic made? Very few people seem to realize how much oil is involved. Fertilizers, weed killers, medicines, endless lists of things that we take for granted are actually oil dependent.
It just gets a bit tricky after a while, and it's getting quite tight. If the world didn't have oil, yeah, it would be less polluted, but then we won't be able to go on holidays.
We should be using less oil so we can save a bit more than we are at the moment. So
it's just fun getting people involved in making something with a message, just to celebrate the incredible achievements that oil has brought for us, then to turn it into a memorial to say goodbye to it.
We're starting a process today which is very exciting, because in a year's time we're working up to having a big trash catchers carnival in Tooting.
We're using recycling as a metaphor to enable people to start to reimagine their relationship with their community, with the planet. We're going to use the material that they bring with them to transform it into something beautiful.
What you're seeing here and seeing now, people who never really thought about the environment, people who have not really looked at their own faith and all the faiths in Tooting, the scriptures and teachings of the various prophets. They all talk about loving the earth, about respecting the earth, respecting the environment, and the walk was all about that. And so I suspect that transition down in TTC will be different from our teams down in Bristol, or even in East London, or even in West London, or even in parts of London. And that uniqueness will give it strength, because you can't impose upon Tooting a transition plan model from another part of the country, and that's why it takes time, and that's why you've got to have patience.
It's about awareness, because most of the children did not know about Transition Town Tooting, and today I think it's been wonderful that they were all around to witness it. So I think it's great.
Every event I've been to, Transition Town, every meeting I've been to is always positive. You've got to inspire young people, you've got to be positive. You've got to inspire first generation immigrants, people from English as their first language, you've got to be optimistic. If you're going to gel and integrate people who've lived cheek by jowl for maybe many years, but not necessarily mixed properly, you've got to be optimistic, and Transition Town Tooting is very optimistic.
I've been involved with Transition1.0 És down here in West Cornwall for the last 2 or 3 years. We operate a fleet of electric cars and vans which we've been using in different projects. Cornwall's a big tourist destination, so hopefully get people to arrive by more sustainable means, namely the train, and then use an electric vehicle while they're here for part of their transport for their daily excursions. Electric cars are very efficient because for the energy put into them, most of that energy gets translated into movement. In a normal car, like a petrol car or a diesel car, you lose a lot of the energy as sound, as heat. A modern diesel engine may get to sort of 50% efficiency, so you're losing half the energy that's contained in the fuel. Electric cars can be about 90%. The effective CO2 emissions of the car based on dirty energy, so that's from coal, from gas-fired, etc. This is still only half the emissions of a comparable car. But having said that, there's no point using these cars unless you're going to use green energy, unless you're going to use renewable energy. So while these cars are very efficient, very clean, it's not just a case of let's replace all the cars out there with electric cars and we solve the problem. It's a case of, okay, let's try to avoid driving solo, try and fill the car up, car share, but then also, kind of think a bit more about what kind of journeys you're making and, try and consolidate all those errands and all those sort of frivolous trips into one journey. What I think is powerful about the transition movement is it's starting to bring together people who have got the right ideas, that have got the vision to do the right thing, if you like. But it is quite a young movement, and so there is a certain lag. Frustratingly, there is a certain lag in making some of these ideas a reality. But what I think is really powerful is that the powers that be, the councils, the government, are starting to appreciate that the transition movement, and more importantly, the people within it, because that's what is the most powerful thing, that they're starting to make a lot of sense, and so it's starting to become what was maybe only 18 months ago a very transition idea is starting to be very much more mainstream.
I'm hoping that Rob will inspire the representatives who have come today to hear him speak to take up the mantle of transition towns as a project which all our market towns can adopt in unison with each other.
We're moving from a time where our consumption of fossil fuels, be it oil or gas, is the key factor in our economic success, our sense of well-being, our personal prowess, to a time when our dependency on fossil fuels is our degree of vulnerability. That's the key message, I think, for today.
The whole sense of a town being in transition from what it is today to what it could become tomorrow in terms of resilience is the thing that really captured my imagination and made it exciting for me.
This idea of resilience is really important. So resilience is the ability of a community or an individual or a settlement or a nation to withstand a shock from the outside. How do we design into our towns and settlements and cities the ability to adapt and change quickly and to become much more responsive to what's happening around them? This is the town of... What we've really developed so far is the transition bit, which is the grassroots model, the bottom-up model. So it's fascinating to start really exploring what it looks like when a local authority starts to come the other way. And then really you start to move to what actually local democracy was always intended to be about, where the community is driving things, making decisions, having a vision, driving things forward, and the local authority's role is to facilitate and enable that. Actually, there is the potential in this to create something really quite extraordinary. And there is potential within addressing these issues for an economic, social and cultural renaissance, the likes of which we have never seen. There's something about the transition idea which is really sticky, and it sticks itself onto all kinds of different things, and you see that all over the place, just people get it, and they go, oh, I see, oh, okay. This is a process which acts as a catalyst. This isn't a process that comes along with all the answers in a little box and opens up the box and just gets them all out. This is a process that you start and you catalyse, and you have no idea where it's going to go or what's going to come out of it. What does a local authority look like whose development plan for the next 20 years is based on the end of the age of cheap oil, on cutting carbon by 9% a year like we actually are going to need to. You know, what does that look like? It's an enormous question, but what's really exciting is today